So, Aaron, you consistently closed between 100 to 200 transactions a year for over 10 years. And I'm super curious, and as far as the audience goes, what kept you so consistent for so long when agents are struggling?
That's a good question. I think being very clear on why you're doing something. I heard a quote one time that said, if you are clear on your why, you can endure in any how. And I was just very, very clear. My family of origin, kind, loving, nice people doing the best they can under the circumstances and information they had available to them. They just didn't have any resources. And I saw what that environment entails. And I just made a decision as a young person and said, I don't ever want that to be my experience or anybody who's in close proximity to me, for that to be their experience either, in terms of a family that I would start one day. And as such, I find that you'll do way more for other people than you will yourself. So, I viewed my mental map was it's not, my children didn't ask to be brought into the world. So it's my job to my duty, my obligation to use these gifts and talents that God has given me to the best of my abilities, fully and completely, not to bury them, right? And I also remember having an experience where I took a mission trip to Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, I got a chance to really see up close and personal what, a large portion of the population of planet Earth, our brothers and sisters on planet Earth, the way that they live. And anybody who's traveled, outside of the United States has probably had an experience like that if they went somewhere other than just Europe or kind of Australia. And in seeing that, I recognize what a privilege it is to be able to get to do this. I don't have to do it, I get to do it. And I know how many people would kind of, beg, borrow, and steal to be able to have the good fortune of standing in the air conditioning and going blah, 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 and then getting in a moving couch that entertains me, and then knocking on the door and smiling and going blah, 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 and somebody scribbles on a sheet of paper and you make $15,000-$20,000. That's insane. If you were to go to any of your ancestors, 2-3 generations, because most of us are, if you go back 3 generations, we're immigrants to some capacity, and you were to tell them, yeah, I get to sit in air conditioning and go blah, 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 and make all this money, I really do believe they would look at you and be like, Mijo, what are you complaining about? What are you saying? This is hard and difficult. We had to pick strawberries. We had to work out in the sun all day long. We had to do really, really difficult things for extended periods of time and not good pay. So that's kind of encapsulates the thinking around it. That's what caused me to consistently and persistently do what needed to be done in order to produce the outcome, which was, transactions.
And when you talk about your why, what I hear at the core of that is, I have this line in my head that I remember Brian Tracy says, where he says, I am responsible. I'm responsible. And it's taken just the utmost ownership of everything that happens in our life that we're in control of, which in my opinion, Prospect definitely fits the bill, right? We're in complete control of that, of our time, especially that prospecting block, let's say the first half of the day, and we should be controlling it. And I think that's where some agents struggle. So Aaron, if you wouldn't mind just taking me back, how did your prospecting journey, because that's the theme of this conversation is prospecting.
Yeah.
How did your prospecting journey begin?
So when I got into this business, I heard all of the kind of traditional techniques or tactics to earn business, which were all very reactive in nature, right? Sit in open houses, put my name tag on and smile at people, right? And they are forms of prospecting. The problem is that they're reactive, not proactive, and they're not predictable and duplicatable. And then I got access to kind of a guide who showed me hey, this business is no different than selling books door to door, knives door to door, subscriptions over the phone, right? It's a direct sales business. And as such, as the great Jim Rohn would say, is your job is to be in the presence of prospects, right? And your pay is directly correlated with the amount of time you spend in the presence of prospects and your skill level to be able to convert those opportunities into contracts signed. So at the beginning, once I recognize this, because I think that's the real challenge, Chris, is when people get into this business, they don't really understand what they're getting into. I think that people don't produce outcomes in any kind of venture in life, whether that be physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, like economically, because they either A, don't know what's required, or B, they do know what's required and deep down they don't want to do it. Right? But I think for a lot of agents, they just don't know what's required. I mean, you need to get $1,000. You have to have $1,000, get a C on a test and not be a felon, and nothing in that test has anything to do with making money. So I was that age. I mean, I didn't know any better. I was just smart, hungry, ambitious, and like, okay, you want to tell me to go sit open houses, I'll go do that. You tell me to go do, I sit floor time at the time, like I'll go do that. Like whatever you are telling me to do. And then once I recognized, like, oh, I need to go out into the marketplace and be more proactive and intentional and purposeful. And if I do that and I combine it with skills, I can actually create a business that's predictable and duplicatable, where I can create revenue at will. So then at the beginning, I started to kind of make calls. And at the time it was for sale by owners. I didn't even know what expireds were. And I was counting attempts, right? So like attempts, not like people that actually pick up the phone. I wasn't counting contacts yet. And and even though it was rudimentary and I had like a little sheet of paper, there weren't really like these supersonic CRMs back then. I had the sheet of paper and I would just keep track, and I wasn't really good at closing. I wasn't really good at creating urgency. I was just good at persistently following up and wearing you down until you either gave up, listed the property, or you sold it. And that rudimentary kind of approach allowed me to start doing transactions, right? And then that demonstrated to me like, oh, yeah, like this is the thing, right? This is something that I do have control over, and I can, get really good at. And then it's just volume over time. And as time progresses, just refining lead sources, shifted into counting contacts instead of just attempts. And then once it was clear to me, like, oh, if you do this, this will happen. Yeah. If you make 25 to 30 contacts a day, 5 to 6 days a week, consistently, rain or shine, independent of how you feel, independent of whether or not, you had a good night last night, independent of if it's, you just had a closing yesterday, independent of how many listings you took last month. If you do that, then without fail, you will become one of the top listing agents in your marketplace, in your office, and definitely in your marketplace as time progresses.
I think it's an extremely simple formula, right? You tell agents, make 25 contacts a day, 5 to 6 days a week, and your success is just about guaranteed. They hear you.
Well, yeah, there's a saying that says like, if I was to tell you and your listeners on this call, some complicated process, the room would be like, we wouldn't have a stadium big enough to fill how many people want to hear that. But to tell somebody something as simple as like, I remember a mentor of mine said, hey, you want to know how to be a smashing success in this business? I was like, sure. He's like, are you sure you want to know? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you got a pen and piece of paper? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. Tell me, what is it? He's like, all right, wake up at the same time every day. Taking notes. I'm like, what? Yeah. And then get to the office or where you make your calls same time every day. That's at home. Be sitting there at the same time every day. I'm like, okay, got it. He said, pick up the phone at the same time every day. Make calls for the same amount of time every day. 3 hours a day. Do that. And I'm like, okay, what's next? He's like, that's it. If you do that consistently and intentionally and purposefully, you'll be a smashing success in this business. And even though that sounds really like trite and kind of cliches exist for a reason, because oftentimes there's a lot of truth to it.
So most agents, they come up with all types of excuses, right?
Yeah.
They get super creative on the reasons why they don't prospect. What would you say to the agents that either say that they don't have time to prospect or they justify, right, with this whole creative avoidance thing, right?
So I think two things. I think the first is that we make time for things that are important. Like we both made time to brush our teeth this morning. We make time to eat breakfast. Like we make time for things that are important, right? And when we aren't doing something at a real deep level, what we're really saying is, I don't believe that this is important. Yeah. And I want everybody to really get clear on something that like, that's the foundation of this business. It's the equivalent of being like somebody who cuts grass and that's your job and you do everything in your power to avoid cutting grass. That would be kind of silly. You know what I'm saying? And you would get fired. And the way you get fired, even though we're independent contractors, the way you get fired in this business is you just don't do any deals. And then you end up being a statistic where 70% of agents within the first year are out of the business, 80% within 5 years. It's always fantastic to me, you know, when you're out making calls or whatever, and you bump into somebody and somebody's like, yeah, you know, I used to have my real estate license. Immediately what I think to myself is like, well, apparently you weren't that good at it. Because people usually don't walk away from something that they make a lot of money at. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think it's just like, you know, the other kind of thing that comes to mind is, because what you resist persists, right? So I remember being in an office one time and I heard this woman, she said like, I can't wait for the day that I don't have to do this anymore. And I thought to myself, like, that's wrong thinking. As long as you're a salesperson, you're gonna have to do this every single day. A day not spent prospecting is a day not spent in business. You're gonna have to do this every single solitary day for the remainder of your real estate career. Like, stop resisting it, stop pushing, stop trying to push it away, stop trying to come up with all these different reasons as to why, you know, it's not something that could work for you. It's just, it's like gravity, right? You don't think gravity's real, like go jump off a cliff and great, right. Tell me how real you think it is, right? So that, and then I also think the creative avoidance thing is, I think that's our nature, that our tendency, you know, if given the option between doing something hard and doing something that has comfort, we will usually choose comfort. But I know this, and it's true in business and in life, that if you do what's easy, your life becomes hard. But if you do what's hard, your life becomes easy. I promise you, if you do this, and yeah, I get it, it can be a little hard. And the hard part is not physical. The hard part is having people call you names your mom didn't give you. The hard part is chasing a lead for 3 months and then they list with a neighbor. The hard part is, you know, getting somebody, you know, there's an opportunity there and you verbally vomit, it slips out of your hands. Like, that's the hard part. I would just encourage everybody to, again, you know, just take out of your mind that this is something that is like optional, because it's not. And then the second is, you know, if you don't embrace the hard, you're always going to have to be at the whim and being controlled by somebody else who's giving you leads. And whoever controls the lead controls how much it costs. And, you know, it's not a very profitable endeavor to be fed all the time.
I wanted to make sure I had you finish up what you were saying, but I do have a couple thoughts on what you were just saying.
Yeah.
So I feel like the agent who doesn't prospect, it's kind of like you have a store in one of the big retail malls and that close sign is always up.
Yeah.
Right? How is anyone going to transact if you're not having communication with anybody? That's one thought I have, is the whole mall analogy. And the second one is the agent who told you that she can't wait to get, you know, to get out of sales, to get out of the business or whatever. It's okay, cool. So then what? You get out of sales, you get out of real estate sales. Like, what do you have set up? What have you created? What residual income do you have? How can you exit the business? Because every agent says, yeah, I'd like to get out of the business, but get out, and what's your next step? Mm-hmm. Have you created the residuals? Have you created a steady flow of income, multiple flows of income, to where you have the luxury of saying, I'm not going to sell real estate anymore? Mm-hmm. And I feel like most agents, they don't have the answer on what they're going to do when they get out of sales. So it's like, if you have a limited time, which we all do on this planet, why not try to compress it? Do as much as you can, as little time as possible, because tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah, and we're all in the process of expiring. So the faster we can accomplish something, the longer we can enjoy it with the people that we love and care about. And I can tell you this, just from a very practical perspective, is that in a capitalistic society, one of the greatest skills is the ability to be able to sell and be persuasive and be influential. You know, salespeople are to the economy what screenwriters are to Hollywood. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. I believe, Chris, this is a noble profession. I believe that salespeople solve people's problems and look out for their best interest. And I believe that it's a worthy pursuit. So you know what's fascinating, Chris? I'll say to people, Mike, yo, answer this question for me. Because they'll be like, oh, you know, I'm having a hard time. I have a hard time picking up the phone. I'm like, all right, answer this question. I believe that sales is a noble profession. I believe that salespeople do good for society and help people to solve problems. And I'll watch as they'll squirm and get wildly uncomfortable, because what's coming to the surface is that they don't really believe that what they're doing is worth pursuing? How could you possibly, right, become a master at a skill that is highly, highly, highly valuable when you don't even believe that what you're doing is something that's a force for good? It just doesn't line up, right? So I think that's also underneath the reason why for all this creative avoidance behavior. Because like the way I look at it is like, look, there's somebody right now who wants to buy and sell and they need my help. My job is to go and find them. Like, am I going to put my own kind of discomfort, my own I don't feel like it ahead of that? That's just selfish, man. Otherwise, they'll end up with like, you know, the average agent sells 4 homes all year long. They're going to end up with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And if that happens, it's my fault.
For not getting in front of them.
Yeah, just because I'm sucking my thumb and being a little baby because I don't feel like doing it today. It's like, nah, dude, that doesn't. I had a buddy of mine say one time, I thought it was so good, like during 2020, he's an ER doctor, and I just thanked him. I'm like, hey, man, thank you for what you're doing. You know what he said to me? Don't sign up to be a firefighter and run away when there's a fire. I feel like there's so much resistance, so much mental, spiritual, like physical resistance to what this actually is.
Yeah. And it's funny you should say that, because as you're speaking about that, I'm thinking about agents that say, I much rather speak to a cold audience than my past clients. And to me, that just sounds nuts.
Yeah.
You've already transacted. They've already paid you in the past. They know you, like you, and trust you. And you'd rather call somebody who's completely cold and has such a low probability of doing business with you.
Yeah. It's wild, right? People who know you, like you, love you, who actually want to help you.
Right. It's so true. As far as to when you were in your journey of starting out on the phones, when did you feel like, okay, the more I master my skills, my percentages go up, right? My contact to listing appointments, contact to listing taken, to closings. At what point did you really say to yourself, you know what, I'm seeing a pattern here. The better I get, my numbers just go through the roof.
Yeah. So once I got access to that like awareness of, hey, the money's in the service. The money's not in the service, it's in the selling of the service, right? I was like, oh, that's interesting, because we can all perform the same service, but we all don't make the same amount of money. So what's the difference? Well, some people know how to sell the service better than others. I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. Once I started to see those little results and calling those FSBOs, and I wasn't really good, because sometimes you don't have to be good, you just have to be there. But I saw like if you put yourself in the presence of prospects regularly and just follow up, every squirrel's gonna find a nut, sort of thing, right? And I was like, oh, this is working. And in my early 20s, I made like $115,000. I was like, holy smokes, I'm making more money than both my parents, man. They're like, this seems to be something that is worth continuing to pursue and stack time on top of. And then I started to kind of get proximity to rockstar salespeople and see what they were doing, right? So not only was I getting my own confirmation, but I was seeing in others who are a little bit further down the path that if you stick to this path, here's what will happen. I began to obsessively role play and practice. I role play twice a day, 6 days a week for 3 years, because I felt like I found it. I'm like, okay, this is it. All I got to do is make the calls, get better at converting, and I should get this outcome that not only am I seeing happening, but I see all these other individuals who have gone down the same path and what they've achieved.
Can you repeat that? Because I think that's worth repeating. How often did you practice?
Oh yeah, twice a day, 6 days a week for 3 years in a row. Because I never wanted that to be a reason why I wasn't able to convert on an opportunity, right? Because there's no security in this business. There's only opportunities. And if I can get my skills to such a degree that if there is an opportunity, there's like an 80-85% chance that I can convert that opportunity, I've essentially created security for myself and my family. So I recognized, as somebody who's highly motivated by security, that my skills were directly correlated with my ability to create a predictable and duplicatable business that had cash flow and not cash spurts. Because most agents, it's just cash spurts. Like, they do a deal, they think they're rich, they go on vacation, and then they come back and they have no deals anymore. Or they get like 3 or 4 deals and they're pending, and then they stop the prospecting to handle all the income servicing activities. And then, yay, they have a bunch of closings, but they have nothing in the pipeline anymore, and they got to start over. So it's this constant like up and down, up and down, up and down. So yeah, so I made that commitment, and then I went from 17 transactions to 50. It's like, okay, yeah, this is where, and then once I saw that, and continuing that activity and continuing to get in proximity to others that can reaffirm, like, yep, you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing. Then I went from 50 to 75, and then from 75 to like 89, and then 80 to 100. And then once we hit 100, I never did anything less than 100.
And you said 17 to 50. When I think of those numbers, let's say an agent's doing one transaction a month, assuming it's a sale.
Yeah.
I think that one transaction a month in life, you may be breaking even.
Oh yeah.
Maybe. You may be breaking even one transaction. That second transaction is what allows you to breathe. Mm-hmm. That third transaction is where I think where you begin to see that you can function as a business.
Yeah.
Then you do 4 transactions a month, then 5. And if I can do 4, then I can do 5. If I can do 5, then I can do 6. And that's just where it continues. And that's where maturity in the business comes along, which I feel that most agents never get to see their business be an actual business, or their real estate license be an actual business, because they're just caught up in per transaction. And that transaction closes, as you said, they get paid, they make whatever they make, and they feel that they're good. And it's that financial roller coaster, which is painful, which is extremely painful.
And stressful.
It's very stressful. So Aaron, if there's a real estate agent listening right now and their business feels unpredictable, what would you recommend that they focus on first?
Yeah. So what I would tell them is the trichotomy of control. So tri meaning 3. And there's things that you have some control over, but not complete. There's things that you have complete control over, which are very few and far between. And then there's things that we have absolutely no control over, which are most things. So for instance, do we have control over interest rates? No. Do we have control over what Zillow does with follow-up boss data? No. Do we have control of what Compass is doing when they're buying anywhere? No, I don't have control over any of that, right? And what I find is that when we get ourselves all worked up and confused and we feel uncertain, it's because we're more likely than not focusing on things we have some control over but not complete, or no control over at all. So what I would suggest to them is, in our business, there are a handful of things that you have complete control over, which goes back to that simple analogy that my mentor gave me, which is you can control what time you get up, which really has to do with what time you went to bed the night before. You can control how much you practice. You have control over that. You can control what you put into your head. I mean, at the beginning of my career, my family of origin, they're kind. I never saw any one of my parents read a book, not once. I read 4 books a month for like 3 years in a row, because I had to get this education on persuasion, on business, because nobody taught me that. And formal education didn't teach me that. I went to University of Florida, nobody taught me that. So I can control that. I can control what I put into my head. I can control who I'm around. I started to surround myself with like-minded individuals who are hardworking and ambitious, and wouldn't kind of infuse doubt into my plans and dreams. They would say, yeah, bro, you can do that. I know you can do it. Let's go. I'll help you do it. Right. I can control what time I get on the phone. I can control how often I prospect. Right. So I would say to focus on the controllables. And then I would also say, I think this is a big pitfall, is we live in a world where we can make data-driven decisions around lead sources. Mm-hmm. And we don't behave that way though, right? So we have this kind of ossification of thinking, meaning this is just what's been taught forever and that we just keep teaching it. So the gurus in our space, they'll talk about what I call the 4 horsemen, like expireds, cancels, for sale by owners, just listed, just sold. And it's not that those lead sources are bad. It's just that we live in a time frame now where we can make data-driven decisions. And if I'm going to spend time doing prospecting, I might as well spend time in sources that have high levels of motivated, qualified sellers, high densities, because the sellers is what we're after, because it's the most leveraged side of the business, and have low cash conversion cycles. So what I mean by that is, if you're just making just listed, just sold calls, that's a really long cash conversion cycle. Okay, it might take 9 to 12 months for anybody you talk to do a deal, right? If you're calling absentee homeowners, same thing, long cash conversion cycle, right? Even your database, to some degree, you got to touch on them, love on them, and then maybe something comes out. It's not immediate, right? Well, And expired, literally, you can talk to them on a Monday morning, be in their house Monday afternoon with a contract signed Monday evening, and by Friday it's under contract. It has a very short cash conversion cycle. I did 100 deals one year, 75 were expireds. Probates have a smaller cash conversion cycle, about 90 to 120 days, but they have a high density of motivated qualified sellers, right? 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every day. 62% of them own a home and 60% of their homes are free and clear. Like, it's a great source. So I would suggest to them, control the controllables, focus on the things you have control over, which I just went over, and then also be intentional and purposeful about which lead sources you stack time on top of, and make sure they have high densities of motivated qualified sellers and short cash conversion cycles.
Yeah, because the just listed, just sold call, for example, like you just mentioned, that's probably how many contacts do you have to make I mean, at least a couple hundred?
Oh, yeah. Just to get a lead.
Right, correct.
And then that lead might not do business for 12 months. So it's like, it's not that it's bad. I want everybody to hear me. It's not that it's bad. It's just like, it's not the highest and best use of time. Where if you're stacking time on top of like these lead sources we were talking about, like expireds, probates, another one would be like cash offered leads, which are a little bit more advanced. But like in doing those, you're swimming around motivated qualified sellers. And I'm radically increasing the probability and the chances that I'm going to bump into somebody that's going to want to do business very soon, quickly.
Correct. And I think that in the prospecting session, you have to have your time to where you're going into your day and your week intentional behind what your prospecting time is going to look like. Like, you can't do 20 contacts a day to just listed, just sold every day. That's not going to be an effective way. You have to be able to figure out who your audience is going to be, whether it's expireds, FSBOs, for rent by owners, probate, whatever the calls are, but just to have that fresh mix daily to where you're increasing your probabilities. And sometimes some audiences hit and some don't. Like right now, to make phone calls and actually get sellers on the phone is very difficult, right? With all of these different screening systems, the cell phone companies, the phone apps, it's hard to get people to actually speak to you because our calls are being blocked. And that's just part of the business. So you have to know what audience is picking up, which isn't, and figuring out from there. Why do you think events like Prospecting Bootcamp, it's so valuable for agents?
Oh, it's critical. My life has changed because of attending events. You know that saying, it says like we're all one relationship away and maybe one decision away from a completely different life. That's very true for me. I know that's been true for you as well. I've had maybe a handful of those relationships, 4 or 5 and counting, that have radically changed the course of my life. So, attending these events gives you an opportunity to acquire specialized knowledge that you can't learn in formalized schooling. It gives you the opportunity to get proximity to people that have mastered this craft at a really high level. And they can teach you tactical information. I like to say frequently, most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics, right? They'll just tell you like, you can do it, Chris, but that's like sending somebody out, to battle with a bow and arrow, right? And I know that agents, we need to figure out ways to make revenue, right? So we can turn this business into something that, will allow us to build something and not just sell something, right? Build wealth. And you need that specialized tactical knowledge and information to do it. And then I would also propose or suggest is it creates kind of a environment of strength in numbers where, if we're all together and we're all working on this stuff, it allows you to open up and really, give yourself a fighting chance to actually integrate this information, get around those individuals that will encourage you with your dreams and goals, not, throw doubt on your fire, and help you to, become the salesperson that you want to be and build the business that you want to build.
Correct. I mean, that's my intention behind doing this real estate prospecting bootcamp, is having a place where agents can go, get the support, do the role plays, have the actual prospecting sessions, because I personally don't know on the East Coast of anybody else who's doing a systematic monthly prospecting bootcamp like we're doing here. And I genuinely believe in it. And I know that it's extremely beneficial, and agents see a lot of, results at the end of the day. Like you said, this isn't strategy. This is actual getting on the phones, speaking to sellers, speaking to buyers, setting appointments, and generating more appointments while you're there. So, Aaron, what would you hope that agents can walk away with after a full day of a prospecting bootcamp, such as the one that we're doing here in South Florida?
Yeah. So learning, I think we've lost what the real definition of learning is. Because we're so awash with information, we think learning is like the acquisition or acquiring of data. That's not actually what learning is. Learning is about learning about the thing so you can learn to do the thing, and then you actually do the thing. So if I'm not actually doing the thing, I haven't learned anything. So this environment, what I would hope people would get out of it is not only would they get the specialized tactical knowledge of the thing, they would actually walk away with an experience of doing the thing. Mm-hmm. And that will allow you, right, the witnesser, the one who, you know, has the name Chris, but is not the name Chris. The one who, you know, has a body, but is not their body. Like that one, you allow the witnesser, the watcher, to see that, hey, I'm not going to spontaneously combust if I talk to people. Like, hey, actually, I had a good conversation. You know what? That guy over there set an appointment. And you can see viscerally, you know, for yourself, to really know. To know is to have a direct experience with. To really know that this is a skill that you can develop, you can get good at, because it implies practice. That's what a skill implies. And that if you do, you know, all the dreams and goals that you had and more when you first got your real estate license, you can actually cause them to come to fruition.
So what's interesting, and I know this has happened to you many times, when I hear someone hang up on a phone call, I'll go up to the person and I say, look, what transpired on that phone call? They tell me. I say, call that person right back and tell them, since we hung up, I was thinking about our conversation and blah, 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 blah. They make the phone call. They come back. They say, Chris, you're not going to believe it. I'm like, yes. Let me guess. You say what I recommend you said, and it worked. They're like, yes, I set an appointment. I'm like, I know. And just seeing that happen multiple times per boot camp, it's really fulfilling.
Yeah.
On seeing agents get over that hump. And a lot of times it's a mental roadblock on where they're just limiting themselves. And especially the new agents, that the fear that they have of making phone calls is pretty intense. So Aaron, if an agent is on the fence about attending, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to them that this is legitimately the difference between staying in the business and flourishing or not. I mean, I know that as an agent in 2025, they fit into three buckets. One is it's been really difficult for them. The cost of money is still double what it was 3 years ago. Transaction volume went from 6.5 million to 3.9 million. We had less deals in 2024 than we did in 2008. We thought 2025 was going to be better. It hasn't been. And that agent is one foot out of the business. Like they are either strongly considering getting a job or they already have. The second agent is an agent that if they were doing 10, 15, 20 deals, 30 deals 3 years ago, they're doing half that today for all the reasons that we just described. And they're just treading water. They're paying their bills, but they're not getting ahead. And they're also strongly considering their choice of vocation and what they do for money. And then there's a small percentage of agents, maybe like 2 to 5%, that are having record years. They're doing more deals, making more money than they ever did in real estate. And the question is, how is that possible? How can you have the exact same environment for the 1 million plus agents across the country, and 90+% of them are 1 foot out of the business or treading water and barely getting by, and a small percentage are absolutely crushing it? And the answer is skills and strategy, right? So I would suggest to you, like, I wouldn't like get off the fence. I would like jump off and run to this event because it really is the life raft that will allow you to continue to, you know, be in this business and thrive in the business.
I think to a certain extent, it's having blind faith, right? Following somebody's lead, because sometimes you don't have enough confidence on your own and you're just waiting for someone that comes along that you say, you know what they're saying makes complete sense. Let me just give this a shot. To one of our boot camps, we had someone who flew in from Boston.
Oh, wow.
And that was the most amazing thing. So she flew in and she saw a lot of benefit with the boot camp. So again, it's agents from anywhere in the country are more than welcome. And so guys and gals, you heard from someone who prospected at an extremely high level, had amazing results. He believes in boot camps. So with all that being said, we welcome you to join us. We hope to see you there and help you get to the next level. And Aaron, thank you for joining us with this conversation today.
My pleasure, brother.
Thank you.